Hi students, at this point you have read The Great Gatsby, you did that research with the green screen videos, and you've decided whether it is Fitzgerald's life that impacts writing Great Gatsby more, or if it's the social issues that impact Fitzgerald's writing of The Great Gatsby. You have your thesis statement and topic sentences written, you have your body paragraphs and your counterclaim written, and now you're ready for your intro and conclusion. By the end of this video, you should not only understand the components of an intro and conclusion, but also why they are essential to your essay. We've been connecting each step of the writing process to this architect analogy about building a house. When a house is built, they have to clear the lot, make the ground level, they have to dig a hole, all of that before pouring the foundation. That is very much like an intro paragraph. The hook is like clearing the lot, making everything ready to go, that curb appeal, and then the thesis is like the foundation. Everything else is built upon it. The first thing you want to do in your intro paragraph is start with a hook, something that grabs the reader's attention, makes it interesting and creative. Also, it needs to relate to the rest of your essay. So some strategies could be a simile, metaphor, or analogy. A staccato, so that would be one-word sentences for effect, like lions, period, tigers, period, bears, period. You also could start out with a quote or a fact or statistic, and then there's an anecdote, which is a short story. Also, you can start with a rhetorical question, but I want you to be careful there. A lot of students will start with, have you ever bootlegged during the 1920s? Right away, my answer is no. So you want to make sure if you're asking a rhetorical question that you, A, don't use you because you can't have second person, and B, make sure it's not something the reader is going to be like, nope, I never have. Now I don't want to read your essay. Another mistake that students make with hooks is they have this creative hook, but then it just doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't connect to the rest of their essay, so it leaves the reader feeling confused. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to start to transition. After the transition, you're going to your background information. So the purpose of this transition is really to connect or tape together the hook that you started with, the thesis that you're going to end with. You need to connect those. So the purpose there is really to make sure everything flows and that the reader knows why you're doing what you're doing. So some tips for that is you could think about, how does my hook connect with everything else that I'm going to tell the reader about? You might have a hook and then say, this is evident in the 1920s, or this is evident in The Great Gatsby, or this is evident in F. Scott Fitzgerald's life. From there, you're going to give background information about the book and the time period and the author. So make sure you think to yourself, what does the reader need to know in order to understand my essay? You should assume that your reader doesn't know anything about the 1920s, and you should assume the reader hasn't read The Great Gatsby. So what do they need to know in order to buy into your argument? You're writing an argumentative essay. You want to convince them. You can't convince them if they don't have all that background information they need. One common mistake students make is they make this very choppy, almost like this is a checklist and they're just answering things. So they would say, the author is F. Scott Fitzgerald, the title is The Great Gatsby, this is set during the 1920s in New York, the characters are Tom, Myrtle, Daisy, Nick. You're going to want to make sure you're not doing it in that choppy way. You're going to want to word it in a way that flows, again, connecting that hook to that thesis. Only give what the reader needs to know in order to understand your essay. And then finally, end with your thesis. You've already seen a video about thesis statement and topic sentences, so if you're still struggling there, go back to that video. So if you remember, the purpose of this video is to make sure by the end that you understand not only what the components are of an intro conclusion, but also why they are beneficial of your essay. So at this point, you should feel good about intros. If not, pause, rewatch that video. Now we're going to move on to conclusions. So if an intro is all about digging that foundation, clearing the lot, the connection to an architect analogy for your conclusion is it's much like a roof that gives that safe and secure shelter that a person needs, just like a conclusion wraps up and leaves your reader knowing exactly what you are trying to accomplish. They feel protected, they feel like that's a complete picture now. So the first thing you're going to want to do is restate your thesis. When you're restating your thesis, you need to do so in other words. So that way it doesn't just sound redundant, like I just said the exact same thing, it's this cookie cutter repetitive essay. Instead, mix up your wording. You could go on to thesaurus.com, get a thesaurus, and look up some synonyms for the words that are in your thesis. You could also try to reverse the order of your sentence by starting with the end of the sentence first and mix up that punctuation a bit. From there, remember, this is an argumentative essay. You're trying to convince me of something. So that's why you restated your thesis. Now you need to back up your main points again. Give a 1 to 2 sentence summary of your first body paragraph, and then give a 1 to 2 sentence summary of your second body paragraph. I'm trying to convince you of this. Here was my proof, and here was my other proof. Again, that was an example. Don't use first or second person in your essay. From there, you're going to talk about that counterclaim. You addressed the opposing argument and you refuted it or proved it wrong. You proved that your argument is stronger. So spend 1-2 sentences summarizing that. From there, you're going to go broader. I want you to think about, why is this important? Somebody is reading this essay. You wrote it for a reason. Yes, because your teacher assigned it. Yes, to get a grade. But really, if somebody's reading your essay, you should have a bigger purpose and connect to that meaning for them. So why is this topic important enough to write an essay about? Why should the reader care? What is significant about this topic, and how is this topic relevant to the reader's life? Don't feel like you have to answer every one of those questions, but those are things that should prompt your thinking when trying to figure out, why is this topic important? If you're struggling, think about, what does this reveal about life, society, human nature, history, literature? Think big picture there. Then you're going to end with food for thought. Just as it's really important in your intro to grab the reader's attention, you want to leave the reader in your conclusion with that idea to chew on, metaphorically. So what you can connect back to your hook. It's just something, so it's hours later and your essay is so interesting that they're still thinking about it. So at this point, you should know what the components are of an intro. You have a hook, you have your background information, your thesis, and you've connected all of that and flowed between each component. Then in your conclusion paragraph, you restate your thesis, restate your main points, you readdress that counterclaim and how you've proved it wrong, and then you talk about why this is significant, and then end with a bang. I hope this helps with your essay. Thanks, guys.